Hey there everyone, welcome back to another Game Vault video. As always, I'm Cat the Beefy with the Game Vault. We're going to talk about Under the Waves today. I'm going to give you a review on it real quick. So let's cue up the music and we'll get right to it. Alright, so first off, Quantic Dream is the publisher. These are, Quantic Dream has done a few games you may have heard of, stuff like Detroit Become Human, which was a very well-received game. Heavy Rain, another one that you may have heard of, Beyond Two Souls. And then they recently released Dustborn, which we won't talk about too much there. But yeah, Under the Waves was another one of theirs. A mixed bag there, but mostly some really good stuff there, If we go to their website for Under the Waves, the overview that they give us, and I'll read it directly to you here, the studio that made it is actually Parallel Studios, and they worked with the Surfrider Foundation of Europe. This is a group that works with cleaning up the ocean and stuff like that, and you'll see a lot of references to that within the game itself. But Under the Waves is a narrative-driven adventure game about the engulfing power of grief. Set in the depths of the North Sea in a techno-futuristic 1970s, professional diver Stan is struggling to overcome a life-changing loss and embrace a new future. The isolation of the deep sea is a fitting manifestation of his state of mind, and as Stan retreats further, it looks like it should be saying retreats further into his self-imposed solitude, he starts to experience strange events far beneath the waves. He will eventually have to make a difficult choice: stay lost in the depths forever, or break free to the surface and the rest of his life. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. There's a little bit more there. So that's the premise of the game. And it takes place over 17 days under the water, although there's a large gap in there that you don't play. You play the first few days, then I think you take 11 days off, and then you play the last few days. I think there's a total of like 7 or 8 playable days in there. And it's really interesting. It's a very interesting game. So let's talk about different aspects of the game itself. So first off, it's not a AAA game, so don't expect a AAA experience. We'll start graphically. It's serviceable, right? It's your typical AA or indie type looking game. It doesn't look bad, doesn't look great. The character design is serviceable. It's good. I do think the actual environment itself looks fantastic. It's really cool looking as you're going about the ocean. It's very murky in the water, as the ocean should be. The ocean's always very murky, so it does lend itself to some mystery as you're going about there. You can't see off into the distance, all the way to the edge of the, end of the world, basically. You only see a short distance out there, so it always gives you that feeling of mystery, like, oh, what's just beyond this next ridge, or you'll see a looming pile of rocks in the distance, or a rock formation, or something looming, a wreckage. And as you approach, you're like, what is that? You get closer and closer until it comes into view, and you're like, oh, wow, that's neat, You'll find several cool pieces of wreckage under the water. A submarine, I think there's a helicopter. Yeah, there's a helicopter at one point, an airplane, boats, and it's really neat. There are regular missions, daily missions that you have to accomplish, and there are a few side missions, not a lot of them, fortunately. There is some crafting involved in the game, not an overabundance of crafting, but there are materials you need to gather, and it's kind of neat how they do the materials in the game. They do it in a way that's like collecting garbage from the water, right? So again, they're working with Surfrider Foundation, which I'm all about keeping our oceans clean. I grew up in South Florida, 20 minutes away from the water, and not even really, and you didn't like to see the ocean littered and all that, the beaches with litter on them and all that. You didn't like seeing the commercials with the sea turtles caught up in garbage, or the pelicans, and all that kind of stuff that they used to play. So, you want oceans that are clean. It's nice to see that. In this game, you'll find water bottles floating in the water. You'll find hunks of metal and stuff like that you want to pick up. And these are the things you use to craft. So it's kind of neat how that's put into the game, and that's part of the message, but we'll get to that message later on. So yeah, graphically it's really, really nice looking. The voice acting is done well. I think the voice actors handle themselves very, very well. The lip syncing sucks. It's not done well. The lip syncing's terrible. I don't know if it was originally done in French. I think Quantic is a French studio, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not sure if Parallel is as well, but the lip syncing's way, way off. But, you can get through that. That's definitely not the end of the world. But yeah, there is definitely a message in here about pollution and oil and all that. So Stan is working for an oil company, right? They're pumping oil out of the ocean here, or out from the depths of the ocean. And it's a big company. He's in constant communication daily with a guy named Tim who works for the company. Tim's topside. I guess there's a big oil rig up top, one of those big, massive rigs. And, Tim will give him his daily duties that he has to do. You got to fix this that day. And then the missions are standard stuff, Fix the oxygen that day. Go check on this rig. Tweak that, tweak this, fix that. Go collect this. And, that sort of thing. There's no real... The missions sometimes are pretty cool, but they're not out of this world by any stretch of the imagination. And so you go through, the structure of your day is you wake up, you make coffee, which is kind of... And I kind of like it. There's a familiarity to each day. You make coffee, you have your coffee, you call Tim, you get your mission, you go out and you do your mission. Something usually comes up, and you have an additional mission added on. So you can do your main mission and then the secondary mission, usually in whatever order you want. But usually the secondary mission seems to be a little more pressing, so you'll hop onto that one first. Do that and then go do your main mission. Come back home and, talk to Tim again. Sometimes you'll call your wife. Sometimes you won't. Then you'll go to bed and then you have a horrendous nightmare. And the nightmares are surreal. And that's where the game gets kind of strange as you sleep at night and you have these nightmares and you're dreaming of your little girl. And right from the get-go, I guessed what was right. And there's little... We'll try to avoid spoilers here, but there's a tragedy in your life. And Stan ran away from it by going to the bottom of the ocean. So, then some people do that. Some people can't face what went wrong in their life. So Stan ran away from it, went to the bottom of the ocean. And, each night he faces that nightmare. And it's sad. It's really, really sad what he went through. So it's kind of cool because, you've got that. And then the next day comes and you do it again, and you do your routine and boom, boom, boom. A storm eventually comes, things go crazy. And then after that, everything seems to kind of escalate after the break of 11 days. You get this 11 days later and then things seem to escalate and get crazier and crazier. Gameplay is okay in some ways and it's terrible in others. I find, moving around on foot isn't bad, but I find the camera angles sometimes are very, very janky. You play like, when you're driving around on the moon, which is your little underwater vehicle, movement is hard. Movement is really, really hard to get down right. Especially in the open ocean, it's not bad. You can get the feel for it pretty quick. But when you're in enclosed places, like there are several parts of the game where you have to drive through pipes and smaller areas that are enclosed, that thing is hard to control, man. I'm sorry. I'm not an idiot. I've played video games my whole life, and woof, I'm banging into things and all that. Make sure you got repair kits on you because you will knock that thing to hell and back. It's really bad. And then between that, the jankiness of the motion, and then the camera constantly moving, like especially if you're close to a wall or something, there have been times when I feel like I'm stuck almost, like I'm not going to get out of this position. I'm like, what am I going to do here? Am I going to have to reboot the game and start this part over? I eventually got out, but oof, it was really, really bad. That's a negative point in this game. A little polish to the traversal system would have gone a long way, I think. Swimming around as a diver was better. It still wasn't perfect, though. I feel like, sometimes you'd be, there's a boost button for when you're diving to swim a little bit faster, and sometimes it just seemed like you would do it and nothing would happen. Sometimes you felt like you just flipped around to face the other direction. The way the buttons were configured didn't really make much sense. You know how a lot of games movement is attributed to certain buttons, right? It's like speeding up, interacting with things and all that. And this game, it didn't seem to have that sameness that most games have, right? If you have a game that comes out and the buttons just do totally different things than most other games. Now, there's no industry standard by any stretch of the imagination, but this one just doesn't seem to get much right on that sort of thing. And, and you could feel it when you're playing. It's not very intuitive for whatever reason. So, unfortunately, there's that. The crafting system isn't bad. That's all right. And it seems like things are pretty easy to find what you're looking for. There's a nice map. The map is almost too easy to find everything you're looking for. I didn't really utilize it well, but I was looking only to play through the story when I played through. I might go through a second time and try to make everything and get everything and all that and have some fun with that. But what I tried to do was just go through and experience the story, because I wanted to see what Stan was going through and face his demons and all that. And it was rewarding. I enjoyed the story immensely. I enjoyed living Stan's nightmare and all that. So, gameplay aside, the game was thoroughly enjoyable. Now, as you went through each day, that final day, however, that final day was brutal, let me tell you. You thought other days got a little bit surreal and a little crazy and all that. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't that final day. And I liked it. It was kind of cool. So, again, I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but, most days lasted between, 40 minutes up to an hour, hour and a half. And that hour and a half was a little longer than it should have, because I was just, I spent some time some days beating my head against the wall trying to figure something out when the answer was obvious, but I didn't see it, and that happens sometimes in a game. You'll come across something that just, you're like, yeah, I'm right there and I'm staring the answer in the face, but I just can't see it. So, they could have been a lot less time. Waste 20 minutes looking for a door and it's right there. You just didn't see it. You know what I mean? So there's that. So I would say most days can be finished within 45 minutes to, right under an hour. But that last day takes some time. There's a lot going on that last day. And the overall story itself has a very interesting ending and all that. And you do have some choices you can make along the way, and that ending choice feels pretty powerful. I thought I was going to be forced into making a choice that I didn't want to make, and I was going to be really upset if they did that. I was like, oh, I didn't come this far to make a choice I don't want to make, I thought it was going to force me a certain direction, but it didn't, and I'm glad. If I do play through a second time, I'm going to make the opposite choice just to see if it lets me, and I hope it does, because that'd be kind of cool, to have those different endings. I like a game that will do that. But along the way, it doesn't feel like I had a lot of choices that would impact the game one way or the other. It just feels like at the end you go, okay, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, and, it's going to give me some different endings. So, not a really deep game as far as your choices go and all that, but definitely a fun time. I think you can get this game done in, 6-7 hours, maybe definitely less than 10, depending on how quick you go. And if you want to go exploring around, which I'm going to do on my second playthrough, and look for all the stuff, all the recipes and all that, then you definitely will get it done. It'll take a lot longer, but it shouldn't take too long, I guess resources are easy to find. Using the map, recipes will be easy to find. There's stickers to collect. A couple other collectibles. Nothing too crazy. And it doesn't look like a platinum's going to be really that difficult to get. There's a couple oddball things you have to do. So, take some pictures of some creatures, specific creatures and all that. But for the most part, I don't think it's going to be much of an issue. But yeah. And another big thing in this game was the music. There's a lot of music in this game. The music was a constant factor throughout the game. I think there really wasn't a moment in the game where things were really that quiet for the most part. Not that I remember, at least. Sometimes it got to be a little overpowering, I think, a little too loud. You may want, I don't know if it was an option to turn it down or not. I didn't. I let it play. It was part of the experience and the way the developers designed it to play through. So, you know, it was cool. I liked it, you know. But again, when I was doing the videos for it, I had to turn things down quite a bit from the game because the constant music, you know. I could have otherwise just left it probably at the level it was and just shut up when he was talking, you know, or one of the other characters was talking, and done my videos that way. But the music was just, you know, it was big, it was boisterous, very, very cinematic. You could control how much HUD was on the screen, which is cool. You know, you could shut that HUD off completely, giving you a nice cinematic, immersive feel. Yeah, a very good game overall. I mean, you know, definitely not a 10 out of 10. I don't think there's a 10 out of 10 game out there, but I'd give this one, you know, a solid 7 out of 10, I would say. If, you know, I'd give it an 8 if it had less jank in its controls, you know. That really hurt it. That really took away from it. But otherwise, the experience was great, you know. I can't fault it for its art design and all that. It's not, like I said, it's not a AAA game. It's not going to have super realistic, you know, art design and all that for characters and all. But the creatures looked great. You know, the design of the sets and all that looked great. Everything looked fantastic. The retro futuristic design of his capsule where he lived was cool. So yeah, love it. I would recommend the game to try out. It's probably pretty inexpensive right now. So, you know, it came out in 2023, so it's been out for over a year. Give it a look, give it a try. I recommend it. Let me know what you think down below if you consider giving it a look. I'm Captain Beefy with the Game Vault. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and a like on a video always helps. I will see you guys next time. Until then, peace.